sinking like stone is all that we fall for. Homes, places we've grown, all of us are done before. And we live in a beautiful world. Yeah, we do, we live in a beautiful world. Bones sinking.
Hi, I'm Holly Gray, author of Dissociative Living. Today I'm talking about negotiating with alters. Specifically, I want to share with you what I believe is one of the most important things to keep in mind when you're working with your system towards some sort of compromise. The best way I can think to do that is to share with you one of my experiences and what I learned from that. It was about 4 or so years ago that I went through a period that was easily the most difficult and painful of my entire adult life. It was the first time I seriously considered that I might not survive. I genuinely wondered on more than one occasion if I might quite literally die. And it was in the midst of all of that turmoil that a member of my system began threatening to kill me. So I was terrified, not just for myself, but for my son. I asked this alter to stop threatening me. I told him not to kill me, and nothing I said or did made any impact on him whatsoever. So I went to my therapist at the time. I told her what was happening and asked her what to do. And I will never forget her response. She very calmly said, "Why don't you try having some gratitude?" It's funny, I've told this story to a handful of people since then, and generally the reaction that I get is something like, "Gratitude? What gratitude? Dude threatened to kill you." And believe me, I understand how ridiculous it may sound on first hearing that I should be grateful for someone who's threatening to end my life. But even then, I understood immediately the importance of what she was trying to tell me. This alter had no life. His entire existence consisted of waiting in the wings for a moment that might never even occur, a moment when all other options had proven fruitless and death was the only way out. His sole purpose was to watch, wait, and be ready to do the unthinkable if ever it was required. And I thought about that, and I was enormously grateful. And right away things shifted. It was a few days later that I became aware that he had retired from his job and integrated with another alter.
This is a lady that I have seen now for about 5 years. She has been in treatment, however, really began in 1976. So she's had a long history of treatment. That is really typical of these people. She had perhaps 4 diagnoses before she was diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder, or multiple personality disorder as it was called then. First of all, she was diagnosed schizophrenic and spent some time in a state hospital being treated for schizophrenia because she kept talking about the voices in her head. The interesting thing is, though, having worked with schizophrenics, they can't control the voices in their heads, and you certainly can't talk to the voices in their heads. However, you can talk to the voices, and the voices will talk back to you with a person with dissociative identity disorder, because it really is a separate identity, and the person is trying to give you some information. So it's different in that regard. But she was first seen by a professional psychiatrist in 1976 when she came in for severe depression. She had a history of several suicide attempts in her early 20s, and at that time she was in nursing school. The problems were related to the fact that she would have this depression, be very suicidal, and then she would switch, and that's a term you hear a lot, switch, and become sort of a different person, and complained about compulsive spending, sexual promiscuity, which she would find herself wake up with some man she didn't even know, and was very upset about this. During these times she'd have periods, we would call them hypomanic during these times, and so she would be very happy and excited and talking a lot and spending, as I said, spending money. And very poor social judgment, drinking excessively. At that time, she was then given the diagnosis of what we would they then called manic depressive disorder, we would call bipolar disorder today. And I give you a little bit. She was treated, of course, with a lot of medication. She was treated with antipsychotic medications. There are some disastrous side effects with those over the long term. She developed some problems. She was treated with lithium. She was treated with a variety of medications. None really helped the condition. Now, they certainly sedated her, but these changes in her were still occurring. Give you some background. She grew up on the East Coast. This came out, of course, in therapy. Father committed suicide. His mother committed suicide. And 2 paternal uncles committed suicide. Father was alcoholic. Mother was alcoholic. And what came out in the course of our therapy was that this woman had been used sexually from the time she was quite young by both parents, and because they were socially prominent, they would also have parties in which she would be, by the age of 11, be the prize for certain games they would play, and she would be used sexually by her parents' friends.
Yeah, we do.